1984, the charts were dominated by the signature sound of the 80s. Synth pop. Sandwiched between the electronic grooves of Depeche Mode and the Human League was a 60-year-old French classical composition reproduced on a synthesizer. It provided the soundtrack to one of Britain's most unforgettable sporting triumphs.
And at number 10, Bolero by the Mike Reid Orchestra and Richard Hartley. And here in their Olympic gold performance, Torvill and Dean.
Maurice Ravel had made it into the charts. This was a sensational performance. I know it so well, yet I wasn't even born when they did it. It's become something that we all know and love so, so well, a defining moment in history, and I think it's down to their choice of music.
Everybody says, well, who thought of it? And clearly it was me.
We can't remember, that's the thing.
Really? That's nice.
And Jayne will admit that it's her.
And it probably was me, actually.
Love that.
We first played Bolero when we were warming up on the ice the season before we used it. To a gentle classical piece of music, just to warm up. And it was just the right length of time, like 16 minutes or so.
As the music builds, the intensity builds. So it had the, perfect warm-up sequence. And, that, I think, in some way, got into our brains. It was really about the nature of the music, of starting small and intimate, private moment. It was just about us. We're in this bubble. But what happens, the intensity grows and grows, the crescendo. Right up into that last part, when you get the coda, it just all comes crashing to this final end. So emotionally, it was perfect. There were particular points that you could pick out that here's a certain mood, here's a lift that everybody would go, oh, yes. And it lends itself to those moments. We thought it was perfect, and a few judges did too.
There we go.
It's right across the board. That's it. Jayne Torvill and Christopher Dean have won the gold medal.
But in the Olympic amateur era, winning gold was a budget affair.
To do Bolero, it needed a full orchestra. We absolutely did not have the finances to be able to do that, and so hence Richard Hartley came into it.
A perhaps unlikely collaborator, the composer Richard Hartley was best known for his work on the Rocky Horror Show.
We laid it down one part at a time. So we started with the snare drum, which is just a 2-bar loop.
Yeah.
And the bass, which is actually just...
Quite a taxing bass
It
line.
is taxing. We used the synclavier because that has a fantastic orchestral library. Then, bit by bit, we played every single part. But also we had to cut it down because it was still a bit too long. And nowadays, with modern sequences, that would have been easy, but...
I was going to say, one of the things about this piece is it has to imperceptibly get a bit faster and a bit faster.
Every 8 bars, we had to turn this little knob on the synclavier to just turn the tempo up by 1 beat per minute. One of us had a stopwatch and one of us had the little dial, and then somebody else...
It's so Heath Robinson. One of us had a piece of string and one of us had a...
It was Heath Robinson, but So bit by bit, we built this. So, it's not unlike modern dance music.
That idea that you can record a little tiny bit of something and add layers and add layers. That's kind of what Ravel's doing anyway in this piece of music.
What he hated, of course, was it speeding up.
Right.
But you evidently thought you knew better than the composer.
Well, I wasn't the only one.
always makes me laugh is that Ravel hated it. And he said it was kind of a joke. It was like an exercise in how to write the most boring piece of music you could, but make an orchestra sound amazing. So he starts with that really boring bass line, and then he's sort of adding every instrument in the orchestra until in the end you get this like overwhelming wall of sound. It's a really powerful, effective piece of music.
Amazing, out of those two little chords. But you know, as a child, you know, he was fascinated by mechanical toys. And his mother used to sing Spanish songs as lullabies. So when you think about that...
You get both of those.
You get both of those in this. Yeah,
the bass line is that mechanical toy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the snare drum, you know. And then the...
Sounds like a Paso Doble.
Yeah, it sounds sort of gypsy music. And it's kind of sexy, you know, that hypnotic, sort of mesmeric thing. So you can imagine people in the front room with the record on.
Come on, darling, we're ordering a curry tonight, we're staying in.
Practicing the routine.
Get that Ravel on.
You know, it's still very endearing to every time we hear it. And we hear it all the time now as well. It's our signature tune.
Torvill and Dean's Olympic triumph had propelled Ravel's most famous work into the pop charts. Classical music